Hi. Hi, and welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today, we're talking about, guess what? College essays. I'm playing. I'm not playing. I'm not going to be that sarcastic all the way through. Um, let's do a check-in question. There's a poll that's happening that some of y'all are filling in, which is great. And let's do a question, a check-in question. Who's going to win, Duke or Carolina? I'm just kidding. Don't answer that. I'm feeling silly today. You know what? Let's do this. The check-in question is, what's alive for you today? I love this question. It puts me right in the now. What's alive for me today? I've got my dad and my stepmom are coming in to visit. They're flying in tonight. I'm going to the airport in 2.5 hours. So I'm feeling real excited because they haven't visited our new home here in beautiful Los Angeles, California. What else is alive for me today? I am excited about college basketball because my team is unexpectedly in the Final Four. So that's not why my father's flying in, but it might as well be. Oh my gosh, Bill, you just said the D word. Duke. I'm kidding. We're going to talk. Let me tell you. Well, actually, let me just pause for a second because there is like a slight delay. You can tell me what is alive for you today because I'm curious to hear what's present for you and what's cooking in your world and in your lives. Happy last day of Women's History Month, where we've got one more day of it. Okay, Michael says college visits by my students. Great. I'm into it. Anyway, y'all can feel free to chime in on that. Congrats for traveling, Chrissy. Love it. And if it's fun, if you feel like it, you can tell me where you're logging in from. And I see we got some students on the call. Cool. Sneaking into the PD. What are we doing today? This is a professional development session. I'm going to be talking about brainstorming and how do we help students choose a personal statement topic. I'm going to be referencing this thing called the Choose Your Own Adventure tool, which Ashley will share a link to you. It's something that we are sharing with high school counselors. Can get access to it. In order to get access to it, there are two ways, and we can share those at the end. But just know that, like, when you're like, "Are you going to be sharing the slides?" There's like a separate thing, and we'll tell you how you get access to it. But we're going to talk about what is the purpose of the personal statement. Maybe you can tell me in the chat because you probably already know or have your own idea about it. I have a little graph to talk about the differences between an English essay for English class and a personal statement. We've got, I kind of tell students to ignore the Common App prompts, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. I'm also going to talk about some of my favorite brainstorming exercises and why I've settled on these. I'll talk a little bit about structure, but not too much. That's something that I'm going to talk a little bit more about in our next one of these, which is going to happen in just a couple weeks. And I'm going to talk about like common personal statement topics that I think aren't the best for personal statements and why I think they're not the best. But then if students do choose those kinds of topics, then how do they make them work better? And then I'm going to offer like a little framework for helping students decide if they should write about a certain thing or not. Welcome, Marianne, from joining from Peru. I love it. And yay, almost spring break times. Okay. So let me share with you this image. First of all, you can tell me, but what is your version of why, what is the purpose of a personal statement? And I have to pause because, again, there's like this 15-second delay. But let me know in the chat what you think it is. My version of this is the purpose of the personal statement is for students to demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that they're bringing with them to a college campus. So I'll say it again, the skills, qualities, values, you'll hear me say that a lot, and interests that they're bringing to a college campus. But of course, the question is, how do you do that? What are some of the best ways to do that? And if we've got any English teachers or former English teachers on the call, what's the difference between a personal statement and an English essay? And this is like, hopefully, when I say this sometimes to counselors, they're like, please say it once more for the people in the back. So whereas an English essay, its purpose is to make an argument and support it with evidence, a personal statement is, as I just said to you, demonstrating the values, skills, qualities, and interests that a student's going to bring with them to a college campus. The thesis for an English essay is going to be explicit. Like, here is the thing that I'm wanting you to know. And it's probably early on, probably at the end of the first paragraph. Side note to Ashley, I'm in this tiny little box in the corner. Will you make my tiny little box a slightly larger box? That would be super awesome. Okay. For the personal statement, if you are, if you have a thesis, it's probably implied, or it's probably not even in there, right? If it is there, it's probably like, near the end, as you've probably seen in certain essays. There we go. Now I'm larger. The tone of English essays is a little more analytical. We're looking at a specific text that we're analyzing in many cases. In personal statements, it's a little more casual, a little more like you're having a conversation with a friend. I like to say that it's like having a conversation with a smart friend. That's how it should kind of feel. I statements, not so much in English essays, but they're totally fine in personal statements. Contractions, maybe not in English essays. They're totally fine in personal statements. And vulnerability, maybe not so much in an English essay, but totally, yes, okay. And even maybe in the current landscape of things, encouraged or invited in the personal statement. Because how else do we make it personal? English essays are helping us understand how a student thinks, whereas a personal statement is helping us understand how a student thinks, yes, but also feels, works, plays, and lives, right? What would you add to that? I want to just say, here we go. Patty's got something. A personal statement is an opportunity for students to share their own narrative that highlights their teachers, their strengths, beliefs, and fit in a particular campus. I love that. Paul adds, the personal statement is an opportunity to add dimension to who you are. Yes, beyond all of those, beyond the numbers, as it were. Susan says, it's now going to be used to weed out applicants, especially now that standardized tests are gone. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, so how do we help students find topics, like generate a big list of them? And then how do we help them pick? So if you've taken one of my courses before, some of this will be repetitive. If you've never taken one of my courses before, some of this might be like news to you. But some of my favorite ways of generating a personal statement topic are to start with something that has nothing to do with challenges. Because oftentimes students are drawn to that, like, what is the toughest thing that I've been to thing, right? And I like to encourage other potential topics. And how do we draw those out? So the way I created these exercises is I kind of used exercises that I developed over the last, 15 years. And having tested them with different students, I kind of weeded out to see, okay, which of these are most reliably leading students to find their actual topics. And what I found is that I had this big spreadsheet. It's going to like overwhelm you, but I looked through 300 different, personal statements. I'm going to show you the spreadsheet for a second. And what I found, because this will be new, even if you've taken my course, is that there were like 7 different types of essays that were coming up pretty often. And what I did is I reverse engineered some exercises. These all represent a different essay that's inside my top secret stash of essays. And what I did is basically reverse engineered an exercise for each of these different 7 types. And these aren't the only 7 types of essays, but if you've read my books or something and you've seen where I talked about like the 4 types of essays, I've kind of done away with that. And now I'm like, here are 7 different ways, 7 different paths for writing your essay. And the 8th path is like, or you can write about challenges. So I'm going to walk you through those. This is going to be, and if some of you is like, oh my gosh, I've heard this already, then go have a beautiful rest of your evening. And sorry that this is like stuff you've heard before. But if you want to hear me say it, I'm going to say it in a slightly different way. So that's what you can get for hanging around. Or especially if you're like teaching students this and you're like, oh, let's hear how Ethan does it this time. It might be slightly different. Okay. So the first exercise that I love to give students that sort of sets context for the whole thing is, once more for the folks in the back, the values exercise. The values exercise is a simple list of values, or I call it my values menu. And I love to because any student can do this. I don't think I've ever found a student who was like, I don't know exactly at all what you're talking about. But you give them a small amount of time and you say, hey, you got 3 minutes or whatever to just highlight your top 10 values. So they highlight their top 10 values. Okay, now let's go down to 5. What are your top 5 values of those? And they're like, oh, this is harder. And then maybe we go down to 3. And then a follow-up thing that I'll sometimes do is say, beside each of those values, will you just write down a word or, a few words that represent how that value represents itself in your life? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to prime them for all the work that we're going to do. That's a new thing that I don't always say on these sessions. But if a student emphasizes creativity, for example, that might be something that might come up somewhere in their application. And if they were to just write in parentheses, how does that manifest itself? Well, it comes through the drawing that I do, or it comes through like the coding that I do, because I'm like a really creative coder. So I love to have students starting to even early on think about how do their values manifest themselves? Because, oh, by the way, that's going to be what this whole personal statement and application process is about. Okay, so that's the first one. That's kind of the starting one. Then I have these other brainstorming exercises, which again, I'll show you how to get access to these. But in terms of the exercise themselves, my first favorite one is I love, I know. I'm actually going to share my face because I think it's a little more interesting than walking you through a Google Doc. Hi. So this simple exercise involves asking students to make a list of things that they love. And so I'll set a 1-minute timer. And if you're doing this in a group setting with students, you could start by just making a list of things that you love, just to illustrate it. So it might look something like, all right, my name's Ethan, and I love rainy weather. I love North Carolina basketball. I love silence. I love perfectly temperature water, which is what I'm drinking right now, etc. And I just make a list of these. And you might be like, what does this have to do with college essays? And it's really just to get, we're trying to, there are a couple of things, and this is new stuff too. I'm trying to remove the filter of, that's not a good idea, or I shouldn't write about that. We're really just trying to get students like jamming. And sometimes students will like adapt it from like, I love to like, I like, which is fine. And there are a couple different ways of doing this. You can just have students like write it down for a minute, or you can have them say it out loud if you're meeting one-on-one and you like type the stuff. And once they're done, they've got a list of like things that they love. It's also to get just get the motor going. Let's just start riffing. There are a couple ways that it'll come back later in the exercises. The next exercise I love is called I know. And the I know exercise is like, what are some things that you know a lot about or that you could geek out on? And so we just make a big list of what are all these things that I know a lot about. So I know a lot about the International Phonetic Alphabet. I know a lot about North Carolina basketball. Sometimes they repeat. I know a lot about, I was going to say jazz. Do I know a lot about jazz? Yeah, I think I do. I know a lot about, pens that write really well. I know a lot about writing. I know a lot about facilitation. And I would just keep going. Okay, now we're still doing that one thing of like just getting students going. But now you never know. One of these things could end up as a cool personal statement topic. I don't think I'm going to write a Carolina basketball essay, but I could totally write an essay on, for example, listening. I could write an essay about games is something that I love and know a lot about. That's the first exercise. That's the second exercise, actually. The next one I do and offer is this essence objects exercise, which if you've read my book or been on my website, you've seen it, but it involves the 30-second version is you come up with a list of objects that represent different sides of who you are. So essence objects for me, there's a friendship bracelet that I'm wearing that represents my connection to my wife, my partner, who made this for me. And to me, this represents our connection that needs to be rewoven each year. Cool metaphor. They don't all have to be metaphors. An essence object could be, for example, this water bottle, which represents my commitment to hydrating and to my health, which hasn't always been there, but it has been the last couple of years. So I give a couple examples and let students go through that. And I have this big list of questions that, and you can find it just by Googling essence objects, college essay guy. But essentially walking them through those can also come up with ideas. The next exercise is the superpowers one. And again, I'll tell you how all these connect to topics in just a minute. The superpowers exercise would be involve asking, what are your superpowers? Or what is a superpower that you have? So it could be, for example, your superpower is, I mentioned already, listening. It could be that a superpower you have is, recognizing others' needs. It could be a superpower you have is juggling while jogging, as one former student had. So you basically make a list of what are some superpowers. And sometimes students will draw blank and they'll be like, I don't know what you mean by superpowers. And you give them some examples. Well, one of my superpowers is like, and you could be something really specific and personal. And part of this also is I think it gives us an opportunity as counselors to be a little bit vulnerable and to let them get to know us. And when they see that we are vulnerable and silly and human, then they're like, oh, maybe I could be a little more vulnerable and silly and human. So some of my superpower, let me just get really specific with the superpower of mine. A superpower that I have, I can pretty much tell how people are feeling when I enter a room. I'm pretty intuitive and pretty good reader of body language. I'm also pretty good at taking it personally. That's the kryptonite. You can also, there's a variation here. This is new. A variation on the superpowers exercise is like push that to an extreme of like take that superpower and just like nudge it, being able to like really read into what other people are thinking and feeling. Like the kryptonite of that is like, and thinking that it's my fault. Thinking that if anybody's feeling anything bad, it's like, did I do something or did I say something? Can I get an amen? Does anybody, I don't know if there are any other intuitive feelers in here that resonate with this. Let's see. Anyway, that's the superpowers exercise. And it's a pretty simple question. All these can be done in just about a minute. The fourth one is oftentimes students have careers that they're interested in. So just asking them, what is oh yes, I'm an empath, Patrice, you better believe it. Careers. What is a career that you're interested in? And what different values would someone who needs to excel in that career need to possess? So let me share my screen real quick. If I were going to be an entrepreneur, what are some great qualities? Here we go. So if I was an entrepreneur, I would need to, and I'll just have students look at this values list and pick a bunch of qualities. So a student can map out a whole essay just doing this. So I need to be creative and value productivity and inclusion and fun and autonomy and helping others and adaptability. All these things are great qualities that the student would show in their personal statement. And I'll get into next, actually in 2 weeks is when I'm going to talk more about how do these actually turn into outlines. This is just about the topic generation. Exercise 5, identity. What are some different ways that you identify? And actually, we could just open this up in the chat. I would just be curious to hear from you all. Yes, dear counselors, what are some different ways that you identify? And one way to think about this, as you're thinking about it, is what are some different communities that you connect with? So communities that I connect with, the dad community, or I'll just say the parent community. The college basketball fan community. This is an identity. I am a college basketball fan. I am a jazz lover. I am a former truck driver. I drove a truck for 3 months. Fun fact about me. I am a theater nerd and a musical theater. Am I a musical theater nerd? No, I wouldn't say I'm a nerd. I am a lover of musical theater. So these identities, and you may not know some of these about me, are, especially if you do know me and you're on this session, are really fun ones that, oh, by the way, could lead to a cool essay. And it could be that I do the whole essay on just my dad identity, or it could be that I'm like, I'm more than just a dad. Dang it. I am also, and I list these other ones, and each paragraph leads to a different type of, the different, side of me. Here we go. We've got baseball mom, performing artist, woman of faith, flautist, dad joke community. Salute to you, Paul. We got plant mom. Yes. Great. Okay. So all of these are interesting to me, like identities that even if they aren't a full essay, I want to know like, especially if you combine some of these. So for example, I would love to read the dad joke community essay, but if it might feel for a student that that's a lot to just do in one essay. So wouldn't it be cool to see an essay that's like combines some of these? So like, let's say that the same person was a member of the flautist, dad joke, plant mom, and bookworm community. And by the way, you don't need to be a dad to be part of the dad joke community, and then they do a paragraph on each one of those. That could totally work. So exercise 6 is identities. I'll recap these, don't worry. Next exercise, what are some homes, places that you identify that you find your flow? It could be a non-geographical location, or it could be a geographical location. So some places that are home for me, I could pick specific geographical places like Asheville, North Carolina, or Los Angeles, California. But I'm also equally at home when I am leading a webinar. I am at home when I am making dad jokes. I am at home when I am writing content, when I was going to say cooking, but that is not true for me. Am I at home when I'm doing the dishes? I don't know that I am. I wanted to say yes, because that is a role that I play in my house. When I'm tidying, I do love to, I am a tidier. and I've become more and more of a tidier. That is a home for me. So I would just be curious, again, in the spirit of like hearing more voices, what are some homes for you all? So yeah, Sharon's got like behind the wheel of a car. Great. Renee's got when I'm doing research. Jean's got where my sisters are. These are awesome. And each one of these creates a different window into who you are. So again, even though you could pick one of these for a potential essay, and it could just be like the behind the wheel of a car, and you've read that essay, right? The students write about driving and what they've learned, and the whole essay kind of takes place in one location, which is in the car. But could it be a paragraph in the essay? So for example, there's the paragraph on when I'm behind the wheel of a car. And then there's another paragraph on, for example, being on stage. A third paragraph on being at home in the woods, or when I'm learning. And each one of these could create a dynamic, short window into the student's soul, but that's not all who I am. I'm also this, I'm also that. The last one, the exercise that kind of, to me, brings all these things together is what I call the Islands of Personality exercise. Hat tip to Hannah Lim on my team, who helped me realize that this thing that I was trying to do was kind of like this Islands of Personality thing from Inside Out. And I was like, that's such a good point. So thank you, Hannah, for that. So the Islands of Personality exercise involves basically just asking students, once they've done all these exercises, to go, okay, based on all these, tell us, what are your different islands of personality? And there's a clip from the movie Inside Out, which I'm not going to show you right now. And I might even get in trouble if I showed a Pixar clip. But if you haven't seen this movie, it's worth checking out. But basically, this main character in this film, Riley, has these emotions running around inside her brain. And one of the emotions, joy, says, we've got these, basically posits the idea that we have these islands of personality. And you actually get to see them. And in this movie, this girl, Riley, has Hockey Island, because that's a big part of her life. She's got Friendship Island. She's got Family Island. She's got Honesty Island. And essentially what these are they're different sides of her. And in some cases, it's like a thing that she does a lot, like hockey. In other cases, it's like just a value that's super important to her, Honesty Island. It could be just like a place that you're at home, or people that you spend a lot of time with or just love, like your friends or your family. So mini exercise again for you is in the spirit of like hanging out and doing this together. What are some of the different islands of your personality? So just maybe list them, as some of you are doing here for some of the other questions. So just as I did, well, actually I haven't done it yet. Some of my islands of personality would be like the college essay guy island, because I spend some time doing what I'm doing with you right now, which is like teaching and sharing resources. But that's not my only home. That's not my only identity. Sorry, I'm mixing things. I shouldn't do that. That's not my only personality, the role that I play. I also love playing board games. I mentioned them early. So I would have Games Island. In fact, behind me over there, or behind you over there, I've got a bunch of board games. I've also got like Writer Island. So like the part of me that just loves to create, write books, write blog posts and stuff. Emails. I write a lot of emails. Here we go. We've got Peloton Island from Rebecca. Love it. We've got Textiles Island. Oh, awesome, Virginia. I haven't heard about that one. That's cool. We've got, for me, Theater Island. Again, I was like listening to Dear Evan Hansen in the car with my daughter this morning. Musical theater piece. So anyway, the purpose of this last exercise is not to say, therefore, go write your essay based on each of these islands, but it's really to kind of help the student zoom back to what are the things, the big pieces of you that are important, that are probably going to make their way into the application. So just take a look at the examples before I recap. But Susan's got like academia, the labor movement, Truth Tellers Island. Like, don't you want to read that personal statement or see that application where all of these different sides of like Susan are coming through? The academic side, the labor movement side, the truth teller. Like, I'm so excited to see all those different sides of you. From Patty, we've got Gaming Island, Fantasy Writer Island, Foodie Island, and Music Island. Cool. So here's a quick recap of what we've just done. Big picture. We start with a values exercise and we ask students, hey, here's a list of values, pick your top 10. Then the question that we're thinking of, or that you might even say to a student, is like, okay, how do we then manifest these values? Or how do these values manifest themselves in your world? And then how are they going to manifest themselves in the application? So I just walked you through a few different types of exercises, and I'm just going to flash. This is that tool that I'm trying to do this off the tool so that if you don't have access to the tool, you're still getting value out of this. But here you go. So here are the exercises. I'm just going to zoom in real quick. There we go. So the I love, I know exercise, which again, list of things you love or know a lot about. You've got the essence objects. Another thing I call this is like the stuff in my room. And so students who are struggling to come up with like, I can't think of a deep and impressive essence object. I'm like, you don't have to. Just name the stuff in your room. Skills or superpowers. I call them superpowers, but they're stuff that you're good at. Career. Identity. Name all your identities. Home. Name all your homes. And then another path that sometimes comes up, which I didn't talk about, and I'll talk about why I didn't talk about it in a couple minutes, but is like sometimes students when they're talking about things that they love or know a lot about, they'll talk about an extracurricular activity. Now, I don't think extracurricular activities are a great thing to write your personal statement on, which again, I'll get to in just a minute why, but sometimes these can lead to a decent personal statement topic. There are other paths, certainly, that students could choose, but these exercises will pretty reliably lead them to some topics. So again, values first, ask them the questions that I just walked you through, and then we zoom out and go, what are the islands of your personality? And they're like, what? And then you give them examples, and they're like, oh. And based on all this exercise, you've then primed them to think about, for example, as Mariana is saying, dance, books, psychology, adventure, travel, and social. Those are 5 sides of me that I could potentially talk about in my overall application. Pause. Pausing for questions. Because those are my, if we're doing 80-20 and you need to go right now, that's the biggest value of this session. I'm going to get into like some do's and don'ts, but like in terms of like delivering what I said I was going to deliver, that 20 minutes of like how to help students find awesome topics, that's what I would recommend doing. There's this awkward pause that I have to like wait 15 seconds so that it's like my voice is echoing across the virtual canyons or something. Okay, questions, send them to me and I will answer them. The next thing that students often wonder about is, how do I then pick a topic? So I've got all these things, I've got all this stuff to write about. How do I know which of the stuff is the good stuff, the best stuff? Well, one of the things that I encourage students to think about, yes, do I run through, Elizabeth's asking, do I run through all those exercises with each student? I do. When I'm doing an online course, this is what we start with. We spend the first half hour doing this. If it's a student that's going to meet with me one-on-one, I send them a Google Doc that has all these exercises on it, and they go and do them. And then when they show up, we've got all this awesome content. I definitely will talk about why I think extracurriculars aren't great personal statement topics. Yes, let me get to that in just a second. Yes. Ashley, I promise I'm going to get to that. Let me give a framing device for how I encourage students to think about topics. Okay. So if a student wants to write about challenges, what I'll say to them, and this is what I call a narrative structure, is I'll ask them, okay, what were the challenges that you faced and what impacts did they have on you? And there's a whole separate exercise for this, which I'm not going to get into today. What did you do about it and what did you learn? And with those 4 questions, what were the challenges, effects, what did you do about it, what did you learn? Usually pretty quickly when they map those things out, I can help a student assess if it's a good topic or not. And the questions I ask them about a challenges-based essay are these challenges compelling? Are they difficult or compelling? And it's hard to know that. And this is why they sometimes will ask counselors, is this a good topic or not? So, and we'll sometimes play this game of like, is this a good topic or not? But if a student is, for example, wanting to write about a bad grade they got, probably on the spectrum of like, really difficult to not all that difficult, or, it's probably over here, in the spectrum of things. The next question that students are often asking, and this is like, I'm marking this on an X and Y axis, is, do I have insights that would, it's like a so what moment that could be compelling. So in other words, say you didn't get a good grade on this test, okay, but you still want to write about it. Is there a so what moment that could be compelling? And then the student might say something like, well, no, I learned I should study harder. Not a compelling insight, right? If instead the insight is like, you know what, it totally transformed the way that I thought about, that I had my self-esteem. It's like, what? Well, that's kind of an interesting journey. So maybe you start with getting the bad grade, but you like get past it. And then let's talk about that larger journey that it sent you on. Now, that's still kind of a hard thing to write about. But if students are coming in with like stronger challenges, more compelling ones, and this is why it's useful to give examples. And I mean like live examples from either students that you've worked with or live examples of students on, if you're like doing a session with them. But you can let students know that there are students who are writing about, incredibly, big challenges they dealt with their family. In many cases, students are writing about, being undocumented or, civil strife or like, anyway, there's a lot to say about like challenges, but broadly speaking, I'm going, are the challenges compelling and is the insight compelling? When it comes to what I call a montage essay, which is a non-challenges based essay, what we're looking for, and this is per all of the exercise we just went through, what we're looking for is it a topic that is somewhat elastic? And by elastic, I mean, could you connect your topic, whatever it is? So let's say you've got something that you love or know a lot about, like animals. Could you connect animal? Actually, let's just go with something that somebody has here from early on in the chat. So somebody said, what did you love? Books. Okay. Could you connect, for those of you who love books, because I imagine there are a few of you on this call, could you connect books to 5 values in 2 minutes? I mean, of course, right? Because you're counselors. But have the student take whatever their topic is and test it for elasticity. In other words, how stretchy is it? Can I connect books to a bunch of things here? For sure. I mean, I can connect books to pretty much anything on this list. So I could probably write a books essay. If my topic was Australian history, could I connect that to many things on this list? No, because I know very little about Australian history. So that for me is going to be a less elastic topic. Okay. So if you want just mental, like quick exercise, take whatever your topic is and see how many values you can connect it to. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks when we talk about how do you help students create an outline. Okay. So that's the topic test for montage essays. The second thing that I think makes for a great montage essay is not only is it elastic, like you can connect to a lot of different things, but it's maybe hopefully somewhat uncommon. Why? Because it's going to be easier to stand out. If a student is writing about, let me just grab one, being a family historian. So Susan writes about being a family historian. Like that's going to probably be slightly more uncommon than, for example, the dance essay. Now, does that mean a student shouldn't write a dance essay? Not necessarily. But because I promised I would talk about this, if a student is writing a dance essay, I'm going to just speak to counselors for a second. How many dance essays have you read in your life? In fact, and this might be a better question of like, what percentage of essays that you read are about dance? I mean, the fact that we could assign a percentage to that, even if it's like 4%. My point here is that there are going to be a lot of dance essays. And so when you're reading a dance essay, it's going to have to be the best dance essay. Now, what I'm going to talk about in not the next PD, but the one after that is like, how do you stand out with those topics? It is possible, but it's going to be harder to stand out because you're competing against all the other dance essays. Okay. So again, if it's, as Ashley's saying, if it's the student's passion, right? The P word, if it's the main thing that the student feels like they have to write about, great. And I'll talk in a future session about how to stand out. I want to stick to brainstorming today. But it's going to be harder. Yeah. Beth is saying many of those, right? Okay. And one of the things that I give students is, and you can feel free to screenshot this. Here's my quick, I want to spend a minute on this because I think this is a popular topic, and who knows if you won't come to my future sessions. So if, when it comes to extracurricular activities, here are 3 reasons why I don't encourage them. Because lots of schools are going to ask students to, elaborate on an extracurricular activity. And so that would be a great time to write about that particular thing. And the second thing I mentioned is lots of students have many different have the same, activities. And then it just takes a whole lot of time and energy to do really well, to really stand out. What are some common extracurricular activities? This is not an exhaustive list. These are ones that I've just seen a lot. There are probably more that you would add to this list. Again, just to clarify, I'm not saying students shouldn't write about these, like definitely. I just think it's harder to stand out with these topics. If a student, this is ones that I would actually say don't write about, like the big performance where the student's like nervous and going on stage, but they're like, maybe I shouldn't go on stage. And then they go on stage to give the performance and it turns out okay. Or the big game essay where they win the game or they lose the game but win in life. The sports injury essay or the mission trip essay. These are so common that it's just, I'm not going to say impossible to do well, but like you'd have to be like, Charlie Kaufman comes to mind, the screenwriter, to do well. That's going to mean like not much to a lot of you, but to two of you, that's going to be like, yeah, Charlie Kaufman's amazing. Okay, do I want to get into the how to stand out? I don't think I do. I think I don't want to talk about how to stand out yet, unless somebody is like, that's what we have to talk about today, because I want to kind of keep it to brainstorming. Okay, so when a student's trying to pick a topic, the 4 questions that I ask for, if it's a challenges-based essay, because somebody asked, what are those questions? What are the challenges, effects? What did you do about it? What did you learn? Because those 4 questions can help the student figure out if there could be an essay there. Challenges, effects, what'd you do about it? What'd you learn? On the montage side, is it elastic? Can I connect it to a lot of different values? And 2, is it uncommon, ideally? If it's not, it's just going to be a little bit harder to stand out with it. Laura, when you say your students, this is a cool question, but I want to click on it. You say your students have a difficult time finding the connector for the montage essays. What are your suggestions? When you say the connector, do you mean like just the mini transition sentences to get from one thing to the next? Or do you mean like the overarching idea? Like that is the topic. So do you mean like, let's call those like transitions, or do you mean like the topic, Laura? Because those will be different answers. Yeah, Amy, that's another one, is like being a third culture kid. I would put that on the list of like extremely common topics, you know? Yeah, Rebecca knows adaptation. There's a Charlie Kaufman fan. So let me know, Laura, and then I can answer that better. Susan says, my students have trouble focusing on high school activities rather than childhood memories. I wouldn't necessarily recommend childhood memories, though. Would you, Susan? Here's the process, and whether you work with students individually or work with students, you know, in a group setting. Once they've done those exercises, I think what's going to happen, and Laura, try this and see, is I think they're going to have some ideas for potential topics, especially if you can walk them through briefly that little elasticity test. I think Laura's still responding to my question, so we'll wait and see what she's got. Or sorry, that's Ashley, I mean. Anu, if there's not much time, students come late in October, what are the few exercises you would pick to do? I'd still do the same ones, because Anu, that's only going to take you 20 minutes, and they're going to generate a ton of stuff. And then, so I would do all of them, because they're not going to, it's not like they spend half an hour on each one. They can spend literally 2 minutes on each of the exercises that I just walked through. The metaphor, the package. Okay. Yeah, Laura, if we're talking about the different paths, like I think that probably one of these 7 could work, but I think they just need to be taught these 7, that these 7 are possibilities. So I'm talking about these things on the left side of my screen. So, whoops, sorry. And again, what I'm going to talk about in 2 weeks is like how these then turn into an essay. But I think these are pretty good ones, especially, like I said, once you see an example essay. If we don't have a ton to talk about, a ton of questions about brainstorming, then I will move on to the next piece. And I'll get into like how to actually generate a topic, or how to turn the topic into an essay. And here's what I'd say, Ashley, good question. You asked, you know, why, if dance is a home, why not? Yeah, good question. So here's what I'd say is like, I think that dance being a home is great, but then I would encourage the student to talk about what are some other homes, because I'd rather see dance be a chapter in your book than the whole book. Yeah. So that's a great way to get students, I don't want to say get them off of a topic, but you know, just tell them, can you make it a paragraph in the essay? Sometimes with revision, it'll end up being a few sentences, but yes, to dance, what are some others? I want to know about other sides of you. Okay. I think I answered all the questions. Yeah, so far. Yeah. So you're reading them all. Good. Where do you find that list of topics to avoid? Here, just screenshot it. It's not to avoid though. Again, I want to say that it's not like, I'm not saying they shouldn't. With the second list, I was here. You can just screenshot this. Do you know how to do that? Here are some common topics. Actually, you know what? I've got this. Here's my quick guide to cliche topics. Here, I'm throwing this in the chat. There we go. There's my version of this thing, and it's got the list. Oh, a bunch of y'all are popping on the dock. Okay. There, that's the list of common topics, common or cliche topics. Okay. All right. Cool. We're kind of, I think I've kind of, let me just see if there's other things that I wanted to cover before about brainstorming. Let's do a student. Okay. Let me tell you really quick, because then we're going to move into Q&A. Let me tell you really quick. Some of you are already signed up for the CEG Live. Let me tell you what that is if you're not already in it. So CEG Live, this is like, forgive me, this is like a 90-second commercial for what this is, and it's pay what you can. But CEG Live, if you don't know what this is it's a program that we put together for public, private, basically for school counselors. And what it is it's basically a series of boot camps that I'm leading coming up really soon. Here, I'm going to just share with you the screen and maybe actually throw in the link to this. So CEG Live is like summer workshops. We've got a few different sessions that we're doing. Let me scroll down to where it is. We've got some at the end of May. We've got some in the middle of June and some in the beginning of August. And it's basically like a 3-day event. Students come in for 90 minutes. Day one, we do brainstorming, which is like I guide them through these exercises. And then they go away and do homework. They come back, we do outlining and how do you write your first draft? That's like 2 days later. And then they do homework and they create their outline. And then we start talking about, okay, once you've written a draft, how do you revise it and up-level it? And so it's like a 90-minute session. They've got 2 different times they can pick from. And they get access to this tool that I've been talking about. This is the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. It basically answers pretty much any question that a student's going to have. So on the CEG Live session, I'm going to like walk them through these different things. But if they're ever like, hey, I have a question of like, how do I outline my essay based on these different types? And it basically walks them through, here's, if you're writing about a career, here's how to write an outline. Here's a how-to guide. And it's got a little, 4-minute video, but then it's also got like just a templates that students can kind of fill out. Along with this, there's this big, Google Doc of where they create all of their exercises. And then what they do is they just go to the top right corner and they share this with you so that you can kind of see what they're working on. So anyway, it includes that. There's also the narrative path, which I haven't even really talked about today, but it's like how to write about challenges in the essay. You'll also find in here this counselor resources section that walks you through, for example, how do you use this tool with students? How do I deliver a workshop? If you want to deliver a workshop, here's a downloadable PowerPoint template. If you want to give a college essay kickoff session, here's a thing that you can use. If you could just keep CEG on it, that'd be awesome. But just type your name in, hat tip to college essay guy, and then all these exercises that I just walked you through, here you go. And there's also like an outline for like how to lead that first session. You'll also find in here, I have a question about helping a student revise. How do I help a student build a stronger beginning for a challenges-based essay? Send them here. So it's going to answer a lot of questions that you would have and give you places where you can send students to like go answer those questions. So anyway, CEG Live, like I said, it's for school counselors. It's pay what you can, which you'll see as you scroll down. When you scroll down to the bottom of this, you'll see that there are 3 options. It's $0, $197, and $497. You get all your students get access to it. This is not like for me to get rich on. It's really just here. This is the best, most comprehensive resource, and it's the way that I can scale me to working with lots of students at once. And the money goes to Match Slaters program, which is our volunteer program that works with low-income students. It also gives to givewell.org, which is an organization you should know about if you don't. They're super amazing and working with the most impactful, effective charities in the world. And we keep 1/3 to just cover costs. So anyway, that's it. Let's see. Okay, stop sharing my screen. Great. What else? Let me see if any questions have come out. Okay. I think we're good. Yes. And if you took my course, you have access to this. So you've already got access to it. I'm going to send out for independent consultants who took my course and who are like, hey, can I use it with my students? We're going to send you an email about that really soon because we just figured out cost structure for it. So stay tuned for that. If you were somebody who's on this course and you or on this right now and you've already taken my course, stay tuned for an email on that. Okay, let's do Q&A. We got some time. Let's hang out. What else do you want to know about? I said I was going to get into like, how does this turn into an essay, but I think I want to save that for next week because that's going to be the bulk of the content. So I'm going to back off of leading like what's the very next step, but I'm happy to answer questions generally about the this process. So HMU, hit me up. Oh, okay, here's a good question. Molly asks, what do you say to students who are concerned that their topic or idea isn't good or interesting enough? Well, first of all, is it good or interesting enough? So it depends. Like if a student is like, we'll say writing about football and they're concerned it isn't good or interesting enough, then I would say, great, then brainstorm other possibilities. And I would walk them through the very exercises that I just shared with you, because I think those are really good exercises to help them generate topics other than football. Football could appear in those some, but you know, it's going to give them some other options. If on the other hand, a topic is good, or you sense it could be good, like let's say a student is like thinking about writing about, I don't know, something uncommon like juggling. That's the only thing I can think of right now. And they're like, I think, juggling, but I don't know if that's going to be a good topic. Then give them the topic test and go, okay, well, how many different values could you connect juggling to? And encourage them to go for uncommon connections. So what I mean by that is like juggling is probably like endurance is a pretty common value, but are there some other uncommon values? Like, is there anything that this would be super leading. So I wouldn't say like literally ask this for a student, but like one student who wrote about juggling, who I'm thinking of, was like, I've learned a lot about math through juggling. And I'm like, tell me more. And so he talked about how he analyzed juggling through math. Another one was community, because he was part of a community called, I think it was called Jedi Jugglers. And it was like Star Wars fans who would juggle. And so there was a real sense of community for him in that. So when I start to hear those sort of uncommon connections, I go, So give them the topic test. And, in just 5 minutes or less, they can probably come up with some different values. And then they start to see how this could potentially, there could be different paragraphs, different chunks for the essay. The high school I work with has students do a brag sheet to identify their talents, and many of the first gens have trouble with this. Suggestions? Yeah, which will you say more about, Susan? What they have trouble with, like identifying their talents? I guess, or do you have can you share a link, Susan, to the list, or just let me know specifically what they have trouble with? Because my broad suggestion is like, if that brag sheet isn't working as a topic generator, then I would suggest new exercises. Guess which exercises I would recommend? Some of the 8 that I just shared with you. So maybe try some new exercises or just test them out and see if they could work. How do I encourage students to be vulnerable in their essays? Great question, Rachel. So a couple different ways. One is when I'm talking about what are some qualities of a great essay, which I'll talk about on the 3rd PD that we do of this series, I will name it as one of the qualities of a great personal statement. I will also show them example essays where students are being vulnerable, and I will point out vulnerability. So giving examples of it in essays that worked, and by essays that worked, I mean like that were well written and demonstrated skills, qualities, values, but not necessarily, but maybe the students that got in, but I'm trying not to define an essay that worked as a student who got in, because who knows why they got in? Maybe it was their essay, maybe it was because they had whatever else. So in terms of vulnerability, so that's the first thing, is like great examples from essays that I feel like work, and then say why I think they work. The second thing is like, I will model vulnerability. I don't think I'm doing a lot of it today. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm doing a little bit of it. I think I'm doing like level 4 out of 10 vulnerability with you all today. But like while I'm sharing with them pieces of, like examples, I will be vulnerable. I'm just going to try and just do it with you, but you know what vulnerability looks like. But like, heck, why not? Yeah, there's like a way that I'm noticing that I'm going kind of fast right now. And like part of it is excitement with you all. And like, I love sharing this. And like, there's another piece of it that's like fear that you're not going to get what you came for. And I'm noticing like some tears come up as I say that, because I think it's like tapped into like this people pleasing part of me that's like, I gotta make sure they get all the things. And that's like where that comes from in my past, is like being a firstborn, growing up in the church, being a missionary kid. Um, there are all these like things, like forces that operated in my life that led me to being a people pleaser, and how that's manifesting in my life now is like on the superpower side, I develop great content that helps people. But on the kryptonite side, I like sometimes go really fast in sessions or try to do too much in my session, try to pack in too much. Or sometimes I will just overwork. This has been more true in the past. I've gotten better about this, but I will just like, not just in terms of tempo, but just try to cram too much into a particular day. So anyway, that's an example of me being vulnerable, and an example of, and I would probably have to tie that to an exercise, but maybe that's like in the superpower kryptonite sense, I could kind of do that. So yeah, so great examples, and then modeling vulnerability so that they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I see what he did there. And then, tying it to examples. They're not used to thinking about themselves as doing well at things. Okay, then I would just like, that's just one possibility. So for me, Susan, I hear what you're saying, that students are not used to thinking about themselves doing well at things. To me, that's just one category of like possible thing that they could generate ideas. I want to propose that there are all these other ways to generate. Another way that you can kind of do an end around is do values. Because values are not things that I am good at necessarily, but just ask it as things that are important to me. Okay, so check this out. If I'm just talking about values, here, let me share my screen again. Even if I'm somebody who doesn't believe I'm good at anything, I can tell you what I care about, what's important to me. So like, for example, let's say I'm a student with low self-esteem, but what's important to me? Helping others. I don't think I'm good at it, but I do it. Global awareness. I mean, maybe that's not what, let's see. I'm trying to like concoct an avatar of a student. Family. My family's important to me. I think I could be a better sibling, but they're important to me. These can start to be a way in to getting students to think about what they're good at. So what do you love about your family? Or because each of these can kind of lead to a question. What does spending time with your family look like? What do you do together? You cook. Oh, cool. And then, so values, again, are kind of like a neutral way that don't require somebody saying, I am excellent at this thing, but here's the thing that's important to me. Yeah, I don't know if that works. I feel like I'm kind of a one-trick pony there, but that's just maybe my people pleaser side talking. What do I think about the topic of loss or death, especially after the last 2 years? I think that the question that I ask students is this topic, whatever it is. So let's generate 3 topics or 5 topics. So what I try and do is reframe the question of like, should I write about this death experience or not? A binary to like, great, maybe that's a topic. So like this death and how that impacted you is one possibility. Let's generate some more. So then it's like, once we have 3 or 4 options, then the heuristic, the question that we ask is like, which of these is maybe going to be the most useful for helping you demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring with you to a college campus. And once they brainstorm that loss essay, maybe it is, but maybe it's not even in the running. Once you have these other topics, because oftentimes students are stuck on a topic like loss or death because it was really impactful. They haven't really processed it. And they're like, this is the thing that feels like I need to process it. And by the way, writing about it could be amazing in terms of their personal growth. It may not be a college essay, but you can say that. You can say, look, I think you should write about this. I don't know if it's going to be your college essay, but free write on it. Here's an exercise called the feelings and needs exercise that can help you process that. But I think that students, in the early stages, we're trying to be yes and, right? We're trying to go, maybe, yeah, let's try it. Let's scope it out. Challenges, how did it impact you? What did you do about it? What did you learn? Now, if it's COVID related, there's a COVID section right, on the Common App where students can just bullet point, here's how it impacted me. So maybe they create it and you go, that seems important to you, but I feel like there's so many other sides to you. Could we put that in the COVID section? And then you write something else for the personal statement. Make sure that they're not like 3 months into writing about it. But you can just, you can suggest that early on because there are these other opportunities in the application. They can put in the additional info section. I think anything, most of these big challenges that happened during COVID should go in the COVID section. Make use of the whole application. What do you do when a student writes a risky essay? Depends on the risk. And my answer is going to be similar. But like, let's say if a student writes about self-harm and they're like, I would do the same process, Samantha, that I just mentioned, is like, is this the best way to demonstrate your skills, qualities, values, and interests? And what other topics are you considering? Because it's probably still in the binary. Should I write about self-harm or not? I personally think that there's probably so much more to the student that's going to demonstrate their skills, qualities, values, and interests, that it's probably something that if you really, really want to, and you don't necessarily have to, but if you really feel like it's important for the context of what you're going to bring to a campus, put in the additional information section. That's with the example of like something like self-harm or anxiety, or in some cases, students want to write about. But oftentimes, I'll hear counselors say it's really, the college doesn't necessarily need to know about that. Or unless there's like a student missed 3 months of school because of whatever this thing is, and they're like needing to explain that, again, I go, does the school need to know? But more importantly, is it the best way to show your skills? Like why you're going to be a great college student. Do I recommend tying in college to each essay? No, not necessarily. You don't need to. It depends on the schools they're applying to too, because they're going to, if they have a why do you want to attend a particular school? They're going to have a lot of opportunity to talk about college in those. But I don't think they need to. How do you help a student who has difficulty finding anything they've done well in or care about besides their grades? I think it's the same answer, Michael. I feel bad being like, just see above, but let me see if I can give a better answer. Because my answer is like, okay, students who, I'm trying to like conjure an avatar of a student who feels like they haven't done well at anything and doesn't care about anything. I feel like even with that student, these exercises are the best that I can think of in terms of generating something, maybe. If all of those fail, I go to my list of 100 brave and interesting questions, and I just try to have, a conversation with them. So the way this looks is, let's imagine that it's you and me, Michael. I'll just put this in the chat real quick. Oh, there's a big piece of a thing that I said I would talk about and haven't talked about it, which is why do I avoid the Common App prompts? Thank you. And we're going to get to it with 1 minute to go. Here's the quick, if I'm in a jam, Michael, and I'm like, I have no idea what to do with the student, I will bring up this list of brave and interesting questions. And I will go, hey, let's play a game. You can pick any question from this list and ask me, and I will answer. If I want to say, I don't feel comfortable answering that, then we can do another one, but you can ask me any question and then we'll flip it. And can I ask, if you're cool with it, I can ask you a question. Okay. So for example, Michael, what makes you feel, what did your father teach you? That might be a big one to like lead with. So I might not lead with that one. I might ask something like, what's the best gift you ever received? So many of these can lead to potential stories and help me start to see what the student cares about. So here's a list of 100 questions. I hope they help. Okay. Big thanks to Kristen for bringing up why I don't talk about the Common App prompts. Okay. I feel like it's easy for students to get what they want focused, where they're thinking about what is this college? What's the magical key to unlocking this college? And I don't want them thinking about what is the perfect shirt that I need to wear that everybody's going to like. Instead, I want them internally focused on what are the skills, qualities, values, interests, superpowers, homes, values. What are those things that I have? So all these exercises are geared towards turning inwards and going, here's some stuff on the page. I think that when students are asked to think about this prompt, it puts them in this sort of like analytical mode where they start to wonder, all right, what are they looking for here? what is this prompt asking me? And that's just not where I want them focused. I want them focused in here. Because when they start to do all this stuff and generate these ideas, they start to see like there's some really cool stuff there. And they start to go boom, 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 and they start to chunk it. And then it doesn't matter what Common App prompt they choose. They can choose topic of your choice. The reader isn't going to care too much if they choose prompt 1, which is like tell us your story, or prompt 7, topic of your choice. I tell students to like write your story first, use the exercises that I'm talking about, and then the structures that I'll talk about in 2 weeks to then map that out into an essay, and then pick whichever prompt works. The short answer to recap, or to like summarize, I should say, this is me summarizing. The reason I don't go to the prompts is that I just don't think they're the best way to generate ideas. I think there are more and better ways. There are other ways to generate topics, all the ways that I talked about at the top of the session. All right. Thanks, friends. I'm glad to meet you if we've never met before. And we'll follow up with details on, I've got a course coming up. Oh, if those of you who are interested, I didn't even mention this, but I've got a course. It's Pay What You Can for School Counselors. And it's starting on Tuesday. So if any of you are interested, we'll follow up with information on that. I'd love to have you join. I'm going to be talking about, I've just done a personal statement course, and now we're going to talk about the whole application. How do you then go into like helping students with mapping out their whole application, their activities list, and their additional info? I'm going to get really super specific on the Why Us essay. So if you want to join, I'd love to have you. All right. See you either later this week, or I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next PD. Bye.